Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have special pleasure today to come to the Indian Council of World Affairs at its kind invitation and exchange with its members and others in the audience ideas and views we hold in Nepal in relation to the current bilateral and international situation. I am aware of the deep and sustained interest taken by the Council in international relations generally and those between the countries of this region in particular. Before I come to my subject, I feel it appropriate to express my sincere wish to the Council for continued progressive success in the field of studies to which it has placed its dedication and which is so important and relevant to us today. As you are well aware, we have just passed through a national tragedy. His Majesty King Mahendra, who had guided us in our internal and external policies for nearly 17 years and who had stood like a rock in times of national challenge and emergency, is no more with us. We felt the void even more deeply because his death was so sudden. At this hour of national calamity, we have been greatly moved and reassured by expressions of sympathy from our friends all over the world. In this connection, I wish to record our profound appreciation of the widespread feeling of sympathy and loss, both official and non-official, expressed in India, of which the visit of India's Vice President, His Excellency Mr. Pathak to Kathmandu at the hour of national mourning was the most eloquent fulfillment. We have been touched too by the gestures of sympathy shown so nicely in the Indian Parliament. Such gestures have been a great source of strength to us during these difficult days. While this loss remains poignant, we have the satisfaction to realize that our young sovereign, His Majesty King Birendra, who has been so suddenly called upon to shoulder the heavy responsibilities of the state, possesses all the elements of leadership. He has been through one of the most exacting disciplines of formal education in India, England, Japan, and the United States. He has deliberately exposed himself to new ideas and trends in both the developed and the developing countries through keen observation and extensive tours. He has submitted himself to the rigors of internal excursions, tours and travels in our mountainous country, inadequately served by roads and other means of communication. He is a staunch nationalist and his identification with the country's interests is complete. Under his youthful leadership, we feel confident not only of consolidating the internal and external gains we have achieved through our policy of non-alignment and peaceful coexistence in external relations, and of stability and sustained economic development within the country, but also of carrying these gains to higher planes of fulfillment. In this great task that lies ahead of us, we realize the importance of continued international cooperation towards peace and development. And it has been a matter of no small satisfaction to us that India, through our leaders and through the Parliament, has extended the hands of full cooperation to His Majesty King Birendra. As we strive in Nepal to move forward to peace, stability and progress under the inspiration of our young sovereign, we are aware of the great changes that have come on the international scene generally and the regional scene of the South Asian subcontinent in particular. We have welcomed all moves taken by statesmen in the last couple of years designed to lower international tension. Progress towards détente has been considerable between the East and the West in Europe and in Sino-US relations. American and Chinese leaders met recently in Peking, and the American and Soviet leaders are going to meet in Moscow in about a month's time. Among the positive outcomes of these cumulative developments is the restoration of China's legitimate rights in the United Nations. And we have no doubt that the United Nations, if the international community so chooses, is now better placed than before to act as the guardian of peace and international security, not in a military, but in a moral sense. While we welcome all these developments towards relaxation, it is our firm belief that real détente can be achieved only when members of the international community have a clear sense of participation in the emerging world order of peace, justice and progress. In any case, it is essential, in our opinion, in the interest of détente, that no attempt should be made in the exchanges between or among major powers to decide the fate of small countries behind their backs. If history is any guide, such practices in the past have increased tension. In the South Asian subcontinent itself, Bangladesh has emerged as a new nation after a bitter, painful and brave struggle. We in Nepal have watched this development so close to us with the keenest of interest. We have not only promptly recognized this new reality, but also decided to establish diplomatic relations at the embassy level between Nepal and Bangladesh. We recognize in Nepal that there is scope for further expansion of relations between the two countries, particularly in the field of international trade to mutual advantage. While looking forward to growing ties of friendship, we send our best and sincere wishes for success and prosperity to the new nation so inspiringly led by Prime Minister Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. We are aware of the increasing criticism made of non-alignment in the context of the current international and regional situation. So far as Nepal is concerned, it is our belief that non-alignment and peaceful coexistence, in spite of recent developments, continue to hold their validity as rational objectives to be pursued for any cooperative international community. In the current situation of ultimate nuclear confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, general revolutionary reality climaxed vividly in certain countries, big and small, and power-based ambitions of most major and middle powers. Search for peaceful coexistence has become a question of survival for the world. It is obvious that there are important non-military dimensions of the present world equilibrium of forces. A strategy based on military power alone, however strong, has proved inadequate in many situations already and is likely to grow even more inadequate in future. It seems to me that developing countries like Nepal, indeed any developing country, must understand the nature of this equilibrium and must avoid the natural temptation on the basis of history and examples of major powers to put primary emphasis on military strength in the interpretation of events and formulation of policies. Whether we think of the future of Vietnam, the Middle East or Bangladesh, we find that there are non-military dimensions of peace, security and progress which at one time or another do not fail to come to the surface. If this is so, as I believe it is, the relevance of non-alignment and peaceful coexistence to the current or emerging situation is even greater than it was in the past. In fact, as we watch the world scene from Kathmandu, checkered by tensions within and outside Asia, north and south of the Himalayas, and within and between the developing and developed countries, in a really complicated pattern, we feel it is time that the world community placed moral emphasis on peaceful coexistence. The relations between India and Nepal are not and cannot be examined obviously on the parity of military strength between them. They are close, cordial and extensive. The total relationship is satisfactory because at the base of it there is respect for each other, regard for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and a desire to refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. Observance of such principles is necessary for the proper development of relations between any two nations. And it is for this reason that the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence have such a wide appeal. But between such close neighbors as India and Nepal, bound together by ties of geography, culture, trade and economic intercourse, regard for each other's national sensitivity is absolutely essential. For this reason, Nepal has always refrained from anything like comment or criticism or action about internal affairs and institutions in India. As a result of the efforts made by both sides, particularly by the leaders of the two countries, it is my feeling that the understanding between our two countries has greatly grown. The recently concluded Treaty of Trade in Transit, which came no doubt after protracted negotiations, is an example of mutual understanding and accommodation between our two countries. I believe it will make the trade between our two countries smoother and the trade with the third countries easier on account of increased facilities of transit. Though looking back, there is room for satisfaction at the steady growth of understanding between Nepal and India. We must recognize that we have to continue to work hard to solve any problem that exists or may arise and to improve relations further. Obviously, there is no room for complacency when we realize that the relations between any two countries are not static but dynamic. I would therefore appeal to you who are present here as friends of Nepal to listen to me, to come to Nepal and study Nepal's urges and aspirations and interpret them to the people in India. I believe there is enormous scope for this kind of service between our two countries. We have watched during the last few years with great interest the upsurge of invigorating optimism in India. Economically, the input made in the Indian economy during the last 25 years of independence has started making significant output as demonstrated in the promising Green Revolution. Politically, the transformation of the Indian scene under the inspiring leadership of your able Prime Minister, with new resurgence of faith and confidence among the Indian people, is no less significant. In this great task of building up the prosperity of India, to which you have newly rededicated yourselves under the leadership of Srimati Indira Gandhi, we wish you full success. Your success in this field is beneficial not only in itself, but also for further development of cooperation between Nepal and India even now, whether in the form of trade or aid, is very significant. And we in Nepal are greatly appreciative of your economic assistance to our development. Finally, partly as a result of our understanding of the precarious nature of the world peace and of our own preoccupations with the development, we have felt the need to identify ourselves completely with the forces of peace. For this reason, we have tried to maintain friendly relations with all the countries of the world and worked for peace, justice and progress as we see them through the United Nations and other means. We believe in the United Nations and its Charter. In particular, we are interested in the peace in this region and have striven hard to create a climate of peace. We have sought to maintain the friendliest of relations with all our neighbors because we believe that any other policy could bring grief to us immediately and to others in the long run. So far as we are concerned, there is no alternative to peaceful coexistence, whether in the world or in the region. Whatever policy we adopt in relation to either Sino-Indian tension or Bangladesh or Indo-Pak tension is dictated by our interest in peace in general and the regional peace in particular, and not by any unfriendly attitude to any country. We feel greatly encouraged by the understanding shown generally of our policy of peace in India and other countries, and I hope this understanding will grow. To conclude, I wish once again to thank you all for listening to me and the members of the Indian Council of World Affairs for their kind hospitality for providing this occasion to exchange views. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, listen to a short but pithy address from the Prime Minister of Nepal. He referred first to Bangladesh, with the attitude of his country towards Bangladesh. I must say that we in this country
greatly appreciated the progress
which Nepal recognized the independence of Bangladesh after the surrender of the Nepali of the Pakistani army. It was a source of great pleasure to us that our next door neighbor was of the same view as ours in this matter. There have been, as we all know, some questions at issue between India and Nepal. But they have, though sometimes some controversy might have developed about it. But I think at bottom, this country was always ready to consider sympathetically the position of Nepal as a landlocked country. And I think we will be certain that whenever there are negotiations in future, the Prime Minister will find that India will always be ready to consider sympathetically any reasonable proposals that might be made for the development of Nepalese trade. We are deeply interested in this country. I mean both the people and the government in the political and economic development of Nepal. The political development of Nepal is the concern
परम श्रेष्ठ प्रधानमंत्री जी, श्रीमती बिष्ट व अन्य अतिथिगण, घनिष्ठ मित्र और पड़ोसी का आगमन हमारे लिए एक विशेष अवसर है। हमें प्रसन्नता है कि हमारा निमंत्रण स्वीकार कर आप कुछ दिन हमारे साथ बिताएंगे। भारत सरकार, भारत की जनता और स्वयं अपनी ओर से मैं श्रीमती बिष्ट आपका और आपके साथ आए हुए सहयोगियों का हार्दिक स्वागत करती हूँ। नेपाल और भारत दोनों देश हिमालय की छाया में विकसित हुए हैं और प्राचीन काल से ही पूर्वज ऋषियों का विवेक और विद्वता दोनों की प्रेरणा के स्रोत रहे हैं। निकट पड़ोसी होने के नाते ये स्वाभाविक है कि हम दोनों को एक दूसरे के हितों में गहन रुचि हो। हमारे पारस्परिक विचार विनिमय से यह स्पष्ट हुआ है कि आज जबकि संसार में बड़े बड़े परिवर्तन हो रहे हैं, हमारे दृष्टिकोणों में अनुरूपता है। यह भी साफ है कि प्रगति की ओर उन्मुख दोनों देशों की एक दूसरे के समीप आने की भावना कितनी प्रबल है। अभी हाल ही में आपके देश में महामहिम महाराज वीरेंद्र विक्रम शाह का राज्य अभिषेक हुआ है। आपके द्वारा हम महाराजाधिराज को अपनी शुभकामनाएं भेजते हैं। हमारी कामना है कि वह दीर्घायु हों और उनके राज्यकाल में नेपाल में सुख और समृद्धि बढ़े। हम चाहते हैं कि दोनों देशों तथा उनकी जनता के बीच विश्वास और सहयोग निरंतर बढ़ता रहे। इस अगस्त में हमारी स्वाधीनता के 25 वर्ष पूरे होंगे। हमारे लिए स्वाधीनता केवल विदेशी दासता से मुक्ति पाने तक ही सीमित नहीं रही है। मानव व्यक्तित्व को संकुचित करने वाली सामाजिक और आर्थिक शक्तियों से छुटकारा पाना भी इसमें निहित है। इसलिए इस व्यापक अर्थ में हमारा स्वतंत्रता संग्राम अभी भी हमारे सामाजिक और आर्थिक पुनर्निर्माण के कार्यक्रमों के रूप में चल रहा है। पिछले 20 वर्षों के प्रयासों के फलस्वरूप हमने कृषि, उद्योग, विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी के क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भरता की नींव रखी है। आत्मनिर्भरता का ये अर्थ नहीं है कि हम दूसरों से अलग हो जाएं। समानता के आधार पर दूसरों के साथ अधिक लाभकारी आर्थिक आदान प्रदान के संबंध इससे परे नहीं है। राजनीतिक तथा आर्थिक मामलों में आपसी निर्भरता का निर्माण केवल पूर्ण स्वाधीनता के आधार पर ही हो सकता है। हमने सभी देशों से भाईचारे और शांति की भावना के आधार पर मित्रता चाही है। हम गुटबंदी तथा सैनिक संधियों से दूर रहे हैं। ऐसा हमने केवल अपने स्वार्थ के लिए नहीं किया। हमारा विश्वास यह है कि संघर्ष की राजनीति मानव के लिए एक सुखमय जीवन का आधार नहीं बन सकती। ऐसे जीवन का आधार स्वाधीनता, न्याय और समानता है। पिछले 25 वर्षों में एक के बाद एक बहुत से राष्ट्र स्वाधीन हुए हैं। स्वाधीनता और समानता का अटूट संबंध है। लेकिन बहुत सी बड़ी शक्तियों की आज भी यह धारणा है कि वे आपसी गुटबंदियों और प्रभाव क्षेत्रों द्वारा अपना प्रभुत्व बनाए रख सकते हैं। छोटे राष्ट्रों ने बार बार यह प्रदर्शित किया है कि बड़े राष्ट्र सर्वशक्तिमान नहीं हैं और न वे नए युग की मूल भावनाओं को समझ पाए हैं। क्षेत्र, आर्थिक विकास एवं सैनिक शक्ति का भेदभाव किए बिना सभी देशों को एक दूसरे को समान समझना चाहिए। न किसी छोटे या कमजोर राष्ट्र को भयभीत होना चाहिए और न किसी बड़े राष्ट्र को यह गर्व होना चाहिए कि उसे दूसरों पर दबाव डालने का अधिकार प्राप्त है। आंतरिक शक्ति का विकास ही दबाव को रोकने का सबसे अच्छा साधन है। समता और पारस्परिक लाभ पर आधारित आर्थिक सहकारिता से आंतरिक शक्ति दृढ़ होती है। यद्यपि हम धनी देश नहीं हैं, फिर भी इसी भावना के बल पर हम अपनी युक्ति और साधनों में पड़ोसी देशों को भागीदार बनाने के लिए तैयार रहते हैं। हम सभी देश विकासशील हैं और यदि हम एक दूसरे के साथ सहयोग करें तो हमारे साधनों का और भी अधिक लाभकारी उपयोग हो सकता है। भारत की जनता का हित नेपाल की जनता के हित के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है। भारत नेपाल के सहयोग का उद्देश्य यही है कि नेपाल आर्थिक आत्मनिर्भरता की ओर तीव्र गति से अग्रसर हो और भारत को सुखी तथा समृद्ध पड़ोसी मिले। प्रधानमंत्री जी, मैं आपको आश्वासन देना चाहती हूँ कि भारत एक विश्वसनीय पड़ोसी और सच्चा मित्र है और हमारे और आपके देश की सीमाएं शांति और मैत्री भाव से प्लावित हैं। आप और श्रीमती बिष्ट भारत से पूरी तरह परिचित हैं। मुझे आशा है कि आपको इस यात्रा से हमारी प्रगति की झलक मिल सकेगी और आपको यह भी ज्ञात हो जाएगा कि भारत में आपके देश के लिए कितना सम्मान और सौहार्द है। अतिथिगण, मेरा निवेदन है कि आप नेपाल के महामहिम महाराजाधिराज प्रधानमंत्री जी तथा श्रीमती बिष्ट के स्वास्थ्य और भारत एवं नेपाल की अटूट और स्थायी मैत्री के लिए शुभकामनाएं करें।